Good evening, Shabbat Shalom to you, and greetings to the 12 tribes of the nation, the scattered nation of Israel, the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who, according to the Bible prophecy, have been scattered into the four corners of the earth through slavery and oppression because of disobedience and the worship of foreign gods, who are now, though scattered, awakening to who they are and who their God is, Father Yahweh, and their righteousness and wisdom, who is Messiah, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Yahushua, and are now awakening and prepared, or being prepared, for the soon return of their righteousness, Messiah Yahushua. Greetings. Greetings also to those who also in the four corners of the earth, along with the bloodline, though not the bloodline, have joined together to worship the God of the bloodline, Yah, through our righteousness, Messiah, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Yahushua. Greetings. Blessings upon those that are now homeless. And I want y'all to please pray. My friend, I have a friend in the Philippines. His name is Calvin. He has a channel called Sunshine Shoulders. And among other things, he helps feed and clothe and house people that are in need in the Philippines. Part of my channel on the Patreon side is donations collected for his work there in the Philippines. Well, Brother Calvin is in the countryside of the Philippines, and he ended up having to go to a major city called Cebu in the Philippines to get his visa paperwork up to date. So he made a vacation out of it. And he has a wife over there and the children. He took his wife and child and he went to the Cebu to get his paperwork together, his visa paperwork. He has been there for a long time, a number of years. Obviously, he's married, he has children there. But when he was there, I don't know if his wife and children were with him, but when he was there, this typhoon hit, Odetta hit. And at this point, most of the electricals are out in Cebu where he is. And he gets money, but he can't have access to it because all the machines are down. He doesn't have food because all of the stores are closed. And the cleanup is beginning, and they don't know when it will be cleared up. They're not allowing anyone to leave Cebu or to enter Cebu at this time. And he's in an Airbnb from which he has to leave by Sunday. And after that, he's going to be out on the street. So please pray for Calvin. I know the Most High will not forsake him, but please pray for my brother Calvin out there in the Philippines and the work that he does for the poor people there. I know the Most High is going to take care of him, but just pray for him that he can get back to his family. That's what it was. He wasn't there with his family. He's going to get back to his family, back to where he lives in the provinces, in the countryside, but he can't leave where he's at, and he doesn't have access to his money, and he doesn't have access to any food right now. And I'm sure it's not just him, it's everybody that's there, unless you have food in the, if they have it in their house already. So if you could just pray for Calvin that he would be able to get his needs met and get back to his family, that would be appreciated. His name is Calvin. He's in the Philippines right now. And again, his channel is called Sunshine Shoulders. And he uses the channel as a vehicle to help people. He does it. He also, he talks about dating and other stuff, people that want to come over there and retire and all of that. But he uses all of that to help people there that are in the Philippines, that are poor, some homeless, whatever. He does all of that work there in the Philippines. So please pray for Calvin is what I'm asking. Blessings upon him and blessings upon those that work in the healthcare field, trying to save lives. And those work in the first responders, like they are in the Philippines, trying to save lives of people who are caught in this storm, and the storms in the Midwest and places all over the world. And of course, there's the COVID virus. Now you got 2 different variants of that. And so you have people that are working every day to try to save lives, and first responders. Blessings upon them. Blessings also upon those that pick up garbage for us to keep our streets and places clean, and who are also doing cleanups in places like this to get them start to rebuild. Blessings also upon those that make deliveries for our convenience, and double blessings on those that are trying to help and deliver and rescue children, toddlers, teenagers, adults, men and women from prostitution, from child prostitution, from pornography, from child pornography, from child molestation, pedophilia, human trafficking, and sex slave operations going on around the world. Just today, found out in Britain, in the UK, 45,000 children, many of whom are under 1 year old, are raped a year in the UK, in Britain alone. And they're saying that's just the tip of the iceberg. Sometimes I wonder if it's most of the people in the planet doing this, for there's so many tens and tens and tens of thousands of people and babies that are suffering as a result of these things. And they caught 2 dudes. One of them got triple life, and the other one got 15 years for raping a 2-year-old. And then videotaping it and putting it out there as child porn. This is going on around the world. Double curses on these people that perform these acts, and blessings upon the ones that catch them and prosecute them and bring them to justice. Finally, blessings on the homeless. Like I mentioned, there was at least 300,000 people homeless in the Philippines as a result of the typhoon. We know that there's at least 10,000 that whole town of Mayfield, Kentucky was wiped out. And there are 10,000 people there, and others homeless, and millions around the world, and hundreds, almost 600,000 in the U.S. Blessings upon them, for theirs is the kingdom, and blessings upon those that are trying to help. Greetings also to the chat. Sister Heavenly Garden, Brother Kelly, Sister Bathaman, Righteous Sister Wade, Brother Yakoba, Brother Azariah, Sister Isha, Hebrew Lion, Brother Williams. Blessings upon all of y'all and all those that are out in YouTube land and in Power Talk that are following the Bible study. By the way, tonight we should be finishing the study of Joel. We're in Joel chapter 3. And we're going to continue our study tonight and hopefully finish it. But tomorrow, by Yah's grace, we're going to start a new study in the book of Revelation. We're going to start a new study in the book of Revelation. If we finish Joel tonight, we'll be starting that study tomorrow in the book of Revelation. That'll be Revelation Series 2022. That's what we'll be starting by the grace of the Most High. So we've been studying Joel. And as we've been studying Joel, it's only 3 chapters, but that's why I say I call it a small bundle of dynamite, prophetic dynamite, because it covers a lot. It covers basically the whole 7,000 years of history that the Bible goes through. You see, again, I just want to reiterate what we've been saying. Now, people talk about the earth being millions and hundreds of millions and 40 million years old and all of this and all of that. I'm not arguing with people that believe that. I'm not arguing with their so-called science or any of that. What I do know is that this Bible covers a 7,000 year period. That I know. Okay, it covers a 7,000 year period. 6,000 years from Adam to the soon return of our righteousness, the line of the tribe of Judah, Mashiach Yahushua, who the world calls Jesus Christ. And then 1,000-year reign of the Messiah on the planet before a second resurrection, which we're going to be talking about tonight in Joel chapter 3. The second resurrection, which eradicates all sin, all sinners, all records forever. And I said records because that's the last thing. All the records of all sin, and all sinners, unrepentant sinners, are eradicated forever, will no longer exist. And that's the end of the 7,000 years. And of course, 7 is the perfect number. The Bible, as we said, is a book of numbers. There's numbers all in the Bible, 7 being 1. We know about 6, like 666. Why 6? Because 6 is the day that man was created, on the 6th day. And that's why 6 represents man. Okay. You got 40 represents testing. You got 12 represents Yah's chosen. All kinds of numbers in the Bible. So there's a lot of numbers in there, and they all mean something. And that's the thing, again, that distinguishes this book from any other book on planet Earth, the prophetic utterance. If we're following the prophetic utterance of this book, we will never be deceived. We will never be lost. We'll know exactly where we are in history and what's about to happen. That's what distinguishes this book from everything else. But nobody will know that, and y'all know why. Why would not people know that? Because they refuse to read it. And I'm not just talking about reading a couple of chapters or even a couple of books within this volume. I'm talking about starting at Genesis and going through the Revelation, and then finishing it and starting again. By the way, I got a little behind. Actually, I'm ahead in my New Testament. I'm in Galatians, but I'm a couple of chapters behind. I'm supposed to be, I think, in chapter 28 of Proverbs, and I'm in chapter 24. You see, it's kind of a battle sometimes. I got real busy with the funeral. And by the way, that's why we haven't been here for a week, since 2 weeks ago, because I was at the funeral of my cousin's husband in New York there. And we were there last weekend, as y'all know. And so here we are now trying to catch up. But yeah, I got a couple of days behind on my Old Testament. So I was trying to catch up today and tonight. I still probably going to try to catch up tonight until tomorrow morning so I can get back ahead. But that's where I'm at. And then I'll be back on track to finish at the end of March. And so we know that April 1st, where we started, most of us started. Some of us already finished and starting the second time. But April 1st, we started, and we're going to finish by the end of March. That'll be a complete year in the Hebrew year. And so we're almost done. But please read the book. It really does kill me when people make all kind of comments about a book that they have not read, or they read parts of it and think they know it. And it's the only book on earth people will do that. Every other book, people won't comment on it unless they have actually read the whole thing. But with this one, they take the liberty of being able to, or claim to be able to, make interpretations and do studies and all of that, but never read it. Isn't that amazing? But it makes sense, doesn't it? When there's an enemy that's trying to stop us from actually knowing this book. Okay. Keep reading, y'all, doing your thing. The Most High will bless you. It's an exercise. It's a spiritual exercise that as you feed on the word of the Most High like that, there's going to come a time very soon, brothers and sisters, where we're going to be deemed to be too dangerous with this book. And we won't be allowed to read it. It wouldn't be the first time in history that happened. It has happened to the Hebrews many times. And so they're going to try to stop us from reading the book. It's all good. And they're going to arrest us. And they're going to bring us to court. And they're going to ask us questions. And the Spirit of the Most High will bring back to us what we've already read. Because what the Bible say? Thy word have I hid in mine heart, that I might not sin against thee. Right? So he put the word in our heart as we continue to feed on the word. He will bring it back to our mind. And that's what the Messiah taught us. Messiah, and I call him Messiah, our righteousness, because as you all know, in Jeremiah chapter 23, it says his name shall be called Yahweh, our righteousness. And that means he's representing righteousness to the Father on our behalf. That's what Messiah does. He represents righteousness and wisdom and sinlessness on Father on our behalf. And then because of him, Father will rain those things on us. Righteousness and wisdom and sinlessness. Yes, isn't that amazing? That's the gospel, brethren. The righteousness of Father revealed. in us. So we're studying Job and the second resurrection now. So let's go over, before we go to Joel, I said Job, I'm sorry, Joel, chapter 3. Before we go there, let us look at a few second resurrection references, 2 or 3 witnesses in the Bible. And that way we'll be prepared as we go to Joel chapter 3. Okay, we did chapter 1 and 2, and we'll review a little bit of chapter 2 at the end for the sake of context. But let's look at Revelation chapter 20. Let's start in chapter 20. Revelation chapter 20. And you, as we mentioned before, the first resurrection starts in chapter 19 and goes all the way into chapter 20. And it ends in chapter 20, verse 6. That's the end of the first resurrection. All the events between Revelation 19:1 and Revelation 20, verse 6 are events that take place at the first resurrection. There's 2 resurrections. So that's the first one. And so let's start in chapter 20 and let's look at the second resurrection. Okay? In Revelation chapter 20, I'm going to begin at the end of the first resurrection. Revelation chapter 20, I'm going to begin at verse 4. I'm going to read from verse 4 down to verse 15. Revelation chapter 20, from verse 4 down to verse 15. And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahushua, and for the word of Yahweh, which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Messiah 1,000 years. But the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On such the second death hath no power, but they shall be priests of Yahweh and of Messiah, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. So that's the first resurrection. Now, let's go to the second resurrection, beginning in verse 7. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the 4 quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city. And fire came down from Yah out of heaven and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. And I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before Yah. And the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged every man according to their works. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. I think that's pretty clear, isn't it? I don't think, there's any argument about what it says, unless you just don't want to believe it, but it's pretty clear. There's 2 resurrections, and there's between the first and the second one, there's a 1,000-year period. And then At the end of that 1,000 years, Asatan is raised out of the pit, which is the grave, and he goes forth to deceive all of this resurrected people in that second resurrection, and they think they're going to take the city, and they're going to be destroyed, and then there's a judgment on all of their dead souls. Okay. Now, we just saw the second resurrection. Again, I told you, let's get 2 or 3 witnesses. Now, remember now, there's a 1,000-year period between the first and the second resurrection. So let's look at Isaiah. Isaiah, the prophet Yeshaya, chapter 24, I believe I want. Let's take a look here. Isaiah chapter 24. Yep. Isaiah chapter 24 also describes the events that take place in the second resurrection. So let's read Isaiah 24 and let's see the events. Isaiah chapter 24. Actually, I'm sorry. Let me correct myself before I get into this. This is the first resurrection, but it speaks of the second resurrection at the end of the chapter. I want to correct myself, so I don't want to confuse anybody. So Isaiah 24 speaks of the first resurrection, but at the end of that chapter, you will see the reference to the second resurrection. So let's take a look at that. I want to read the whole thing, though, for context, okay? So Isaiah chapter 24, beginning at verse 1. Behold, Yahweh maketh the earth empty, and maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof. And it shall be as with the people, so with the priest, as with the servant, so with his master, as with the maid, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, as with the lender, so with the borrower, as with the taker of usury, so with the giver of usury to him. The land shall be utterly emptied and utterly spoiled, for Yahweh hath spoken this word. The earth mourneth and fadeth away. The world languisheth and fadeth away. The haughty people of the earth do languish. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. The new wine mourneth, the vine languisheth, all the merry-hearted do sigh. The mirth of tabrets ceaseth. The noise of them that rejoice endeth. The joy of the harp ceaseth. They shall not drink wine with a song. Strong drink shall be bitter to them that drink it. The city of confusion is broken down. Every house is shut up, that no man may come in. There is a crying for wine in the streets. All joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone. In the city is left desolation, and the gate is smitten with destruction. When thus it shall be in the midst of the land among the people, there shall be as the shaking of an olive tree, as the gleaning grapes when the vintage is done. They shall lift up their voice. They shall sing for the majesty of Yahweh. They shall cry aloud from the sea. Wherefore, glorify ye Yahweh in the fires, even the name of Yahweh, most high of Israel, in the isles of the sea. From the uttermost part of the earth have we heard songs, even glory to the righteous. But I said, my leanness, woe unto me. The treacherous dealers have dealt treacherously. Yea, the treacherous dealers have dealt very treacherously. Fear and the pit and the snare are upon thee, O inhabitant of the earth. And it shall come to pass that he who fleeth from the noise of the fear shall fall into the pit. And he that cometh up out of the midst of the pit shall be taken in the snare. For the windows from on high are open, and the foundations of the earth do shake. The earth is utterly broken down. The earth is clean dissolved. The earth is moved exceedingly. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage, and the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth. Now watch verse 22. And they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall be visited. Did you catch that? Then the moon shall be confounded and the sun ashamed, when Yahweh of hosts shall reign in Zion, Mount Zion, and in Jerusalem before his ancients gloriously. Praise the Most High. So you see, they shall be visited after many days. That's the period of time between the first and the second resurrection. One more. Let's read another one. Ezekiel, which we know we're going to read Ezekiel chapter 38. Now, Ezekiel chapter, again, I want to point out, Ezekiel 39 is the first resurrection. Ezekiel 38 is the second one. One of the signs that you know between the two of them is the mention of the visiting after many days in chapter 38, and then the mention of redeeming some of Gog and Magog, 1/6 of them, in chapter 39. So that you know in the second resurrection, there's no redeeming. So that's why you know, or at least one of the signs that you know, we got to read the whole chapter, but you'll know chapter 39 is the first resurrection and chapter 38 is the second resurrection. So we'll read tonight, because we're talking about the second resurrection, we're going to read chapter 38. So let's read chapter 38, Ezekiel chapter 38, beginning at verse 1. Ezekiel chapter 30. We're going to read it in parts. It's 23 verses long, but we need to read it in parts for what we're getting ready to talk about when we're talking about Joel chapter 3. So let's look at Ezekiel chapter 38. I'm going to begin at verse 1. In fact, let's start at verse 1. And I'm going to start at verse 1 and go down to verse 8 to get to where we were, like in Revelation and in Isaiah. Okay, so that we see the three witnesses here. So Ezekiel chapter 38, beginning at verse 1. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and prophesy against him. Again, we know who Gog is. Gog is the area of the European who has ruled the earth for 2,500 years. Okay? That's the area of the European. Gog, Magog, Meshach, Tubal. We read that, Genesis chapter 10, verses 1 through 5. Okay. And say, thus saith the Most High Yahweh, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws and will bring thee forth. And all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor. That means they got all kinds of weapons. Even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Does that mean all those countries are lost? No, that there are people representing those countries that are fighting with our enemies. What do we call them today? Sellouts. Let's continue. Gomer and all of his bands in the house of Togarmah in the north quarters, and all his bands and many people with thee. Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee. Be thou a guard unto them. After many days, thou shalt be visited. In the latter years, thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword, and is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste, but it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. So again, notice what it said. You're going to be brought, they're going to be coming again after many days, that's the 1,000 years, and then they're going to think they're going to take Israel. Remember what Revelation said? Let's compare it. Revelation chapter 20. Let's compare it so we be on the same page here. Revelation chapter 20. What did it say? Revelation chapter 20, verse 9. Revelation chapter 20, verse 9. Actually, let's read verse 8 and 9. and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints and the beloved city. That's the New Jerusalem. So they're trying to compass Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem, and the saints. And here it says what? It says, after many days, in verse 8 of Ezekiel 38, and after many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword. That's the same land, Israel and the beloved city, the New Jerusalem. And again, we know, why are they coming at the New Jerusalem? Why does everybody come at the New Jerusalem? What is the point of coming to the New Jerusalem? Again, let's go back to Genesis chapter 4. Genesis chapter 4. Before we go to Ezekiel, why are they coming at the beloved city? Genesis chapter 4. We have to go back to what the enemy's plan was in seducing Eve and Adam to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3. I'm going to start at verse 20. Genesis chapter 3, verse 20. And we're going to read down from verse 20 down to verse 22. Actually, from verse 20 to verse 24. Genesis chapter 3, from verse 20 to 24. Why are they coming at the Jerusalem? What they want in there? And Adam called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living. Unto Adam also and to his wife did Yahweh Most High make coats of skins and clothe them. And Yahweh Most High said, behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand, and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore, Yahweh Most High sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. So he drove out the man and placed him at the east of the Garden of Eden, cherubim and a flaming sword, which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. You see, after Adam had sinned, Adam's eternal existence depended on continually feeding from the tree of life. That's why the Most High said, if you eat of this other tree, you're going to die, because he was going to cut Adam off from the tree of life. That is why you notice in Genesis, the lifespan of Adam was 930 years. And all of them cats that lived before the flood, their lifespan was 900 something years, 800 something years. And after the flood, it started declining till you get to Abraham living to be 175. Why? Because the earliest generations were the closest ones to Adam, who had actually eaten of the tree of life. And then as the generations were further from the tree of life, their lifespans decreased to where we are today. So the eternal existence of Adam depended on him eating of the tree of life. And so if after he had rebelled against the commandment of Yah and then returned, that's what he said, if we let him eat of the tree of life and he live forever, he'll be alive in sin forever. Sin would have been immortalized. And therefore, the devil would have been immortalized. But he couldn't allow that. So he drove him out. He had to drive him out, because Adam would have tried to eat of that tree because he was told he was going to die. That has not changed. That is why you see in both Revelation and now in Ezekiel 38, back to Ezekiel 38, you see they are trying to get to the city, because within the city is what? Revelation chapter 22. Revelation chapter 22. Revelation chapter 22, which is also Ezekiel chapter 47, by the way. But Revelation chapter 22, beginning at verse 1, reading verse 1 and 2. And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of Yah and of the Lamb. In the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. The leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. So you see, the tree of life is in the midst of the city. And that's what they want. If one sinner can get to the tree of life, they could live forever. But they're not going to do it. But that's why they're coming at Jerusalem. That's why they're coming up to the land. They want that tree. Okay? It's in the midst of the city. That's why they compassed the camp in the beloved city. And that's why in Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 8, I'm going to read it again. Ezekiel 38, verse 8, after many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword. That's Israel. And is gathered out of many people. That's us. Against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste, but is brought forth out of the nations, and shall dwell safely, all of them. So we're going to dwell safely for 1,000 years. But we're going to converge during this time to the land. We're going to be all over the earth. We're going to converge to the land, and that's going to be our place of safety as the wicked are resurrected to try to get to that tree. Okay, so that they can live forever. Otherwise, they will cease to exist. Let's continue. Verse 9 of Ezekiel chapter 38. Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm, just like it said in Revelation, and thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands and many people with thee. Thus saith the Most High Yahweh, it shall also come to pass at that same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought. What thought? They want the tree. They want the land. They want to dominate because for 2,500 years prior, they have been. Let's continue. Thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely. All of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates. Isn't that what the children of Yefet have been doing since the time of the Medes, 2,500 years ago? Isn't that what they've been doing? Going to unwalled villages, taking the spoil, taking over. Isn't that what they did when they came to this land called North America? Isn't that what they did when they came to Canada and Mexico and all the places where they found people? Come to the land of unwalled villages. The people weren't expecting any type of invasion, but they got invaded. They got invaded with biological warfare, smallpox, and then swords, and then guns. And they were destroyed, which is where we have what we have today. It's all here in the word. So this is what they're used to. They're not going to change. They're not repentant. So they're coming to do the same thing with their same master, Asatan. So here we go. Ezekiel chapter 38. Verse 11, and thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates, to take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thine hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nation, which have gotten cattle and good that dwell in the midst of the land. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish with all the young lions thereof shall say unto thee, art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? Therefore, son of man, prophesy and say unto Gog, thus saith the Most High Yahweh, in that day, when my people Israel dwelleth safely, shalt thou not know it? And thou shalt come from thy place out of the north parts, thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses, a great company and a mighty army. And thou shalt come up against my people Israel as a cloud to cover the land. It shall be in the latter days, I will bring thee against my land, that the heathen may know me, when I shall be sanctified in thee, O Gog, before their eyes. Isn't that what Father said to Pharaoh? For this purpose I raised you up, that I might show forth my glory in thee. Remember when Pharaoh talking all that mess, I'm not going to let Israel go. I don't know you how I'm going to worship him. He said, this is why I raised you up. Well, it's the same thing right here. Thus saith the Most High Yahweh, art thou of he of whom I have spoken in all time by my servants, the prophets of Israel, which prophesy in those days many years that I would bring thee against them? And it shall come to pass at the same time when Gog shall come against the land of Israel, saith the Most High Yahweh, that my fury shall come up in my face. There you go, Revelation 20 again. Fire from God, from Yah, came down on them and destroyed them. Here it is, that my fury shall come up in my face. And in my jealousy and in the fire of my wrath have I spoken. Surely in that day there shall be a great shaking in the land of Israel, so that the fishes of the sea and the fowls of the heaven and the beasts of the field and all the creeping things that creep upon the earth, all of them that are upon the face of the earth shall shake at my presence. And the mountains shall be thrown down, and the steep places shall fall, and every wall shall fall to the ground. And I will call for a sword against him throughout all my mountains, saith the Most High Yahweh. Against every man's sword shall be against his brother. And I will plead against him with pestilence and with blood. And I will rain upon him and upon his bands and upon the many people that are with him, an overflowing rain and great hailstones, fire and brimstone. Thus will I magnify myself and sanctify myself, and I will be known in the eyes of many nations, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. There's your end of your second resurrection, as Revelation talked about it, as Isaiah talked about it. And you could get another couple of places also, and we're going to see one of those right now in Joel. So let's go to Joel, prophet Yaal. Now, we just finished chapter 2. I want to start in chapter 2 before we go to chapter 3 because of the very important events that take place in chapter 2 that prepare us for what's coming in terms of the first resurrection and then second resurrection. Let's talk about the early and the latter rain. So let's read it in Joel chapter 2, beginning at verse 23. This is as review, but it's leading us into chapter 3. So Joel chapter 2, beginning at verse 23. Be glad then, ye children of Zion, and rejoice in Yahweh your Most High, for he hath given you the former rain moderately, and he will cause to come down for you the rain, the former rain and the latter rain in the first. Now wait, the former rain happened when? In the day of Pentecost. That was the former rain that came upon the apostles, and then whoever they laid hands on in the book of Acts in the first century. This is the beginning, actually. The first century is the beginning of the book of Revelation. The first century, why? Because that's when Messiah, Yahushua, made his appearance in the first century. So now, and it ends in our day, approximately 2,000 years later. Okay, so, but the children of Japhet, remember we talked about when we read in Leviticus chapter 26, I will punish you 7 times for all your sins. And prophetically, that's 2,520 years, which goes back to the era of the Medes and the Persians, all the way to when we're getting delivered again. Okay, that's the 2,520 year where we're being punished, and that's the end of the punishment when they meet their judgment. Okay, so now he said the early rain, the former rain, that's Pentecost. We are about to experience the latter rain. That's the rain representing the Father's Spirit come upon us. Again, let me just go over this. Messiah is Father's representative to us. Father has a representative to us because we were in sin. And he has a representation of himself who represents righteousness on our behalf, who paid the penalty for the sins of Israel. Messiah said, I came not, but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So that, as Zechariah tells us, if the Gentiles want to be saved, they better cling to the skirt of the Israelites. As Messiah told the woman at the well, you worship you know not what. Salvation is of the Jews. So as we are awakening and coming to our Hebrew Messiah, who is our righteousness and wisdom, we come to Father Yah in his name. He represents perfection. He represents sinlessness on our behalf. And Father, because of him, will send us the perfection of righteousness in his spirit, in the power of the latter rain upon us, to prepare us and seal us in our foreheads to meet Messiah when he returns. Okay, praise the Most High. So he's going to cause that latter rain power to come upon us. And that's what we're now being prepared to receive. You and I are now being prepared. As we are awakening, we're being prepared. He can't just pour it on you without you being repentant, without you being humble, without you seeking obedience. Because the power comes for the Father's glory alone. It's not for man's glory. It's for the Father's glory. So he's pouring his spirit on us to prepare us to meet his son, Messiah. Okay? Who is our righteousness and wisdom. Praise the Most High. So that's why this is important. So the early rain came in the first century, but here we are 2 centuries later, or 2 millennium, not centuries, 2 millennium later, about to receive the latter rain. And as I said, I expect it around 2027, because that would be the 10 years from the sign we saw in 2017 in the 6th month, which now that was the trumpet call in the 7th month. Now we're about to meet 10 years later, 2027, the 10th day of the 7th month, the Jubilee and the latter rain. We're being prepared for that now. Okay, all of us. We're being prepared. Those of us that are seeking the truth, such as he ordains to be saved. We're being prepared to receive that spirit. That's why all of these trials, all these troubles, all of these things are coming upon us. Okay, that's why they're coming upon us, because we're being prepared. Right. Okay, so he said, I'm gonna cause the former rain to come on you moderately, but then I'm gonna rain the latter rain on you. Okay, and he represents it. Notice verse 24. And the floor shall be full of wheat, and the vat shall overflow with wine and oil, and I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten, the cankerworm and the caterpillar and the palmer worm, my great army which I sent among you. That's what it represented in all of those northern kingdoms. Lastly, the children of Japhet for the last 2,500 years coming out of the north, enslaving his people, oppressing his people, and not just his people, all people, right? He said, I'm going to restore everything to you. That's what happens to us in the first resurrection. Everything gets restored to us. And the announcement of it is in 2027. Okay? All right. Verse 26. And ye shall eat in plenty and be satisfied, and praise the name of Yahweh your Most High, that hath dealt wondrously with you. And my people shall never be ashamed. And ye shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am Yahweh your Most High, and none else. My people shall never be ashamed. Notice he says it twice. And it come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. And also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my spirit. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of Yahweh come. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of Yahweh shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as Yahweh has said, and in the remnant whom Yahweh shall call. Now, we're already seeing these things. There's been many blood moons. We're seeing the blood moons coming often, as we get closer to the end. It's a sign. Okay, it's a sign. So we're seeing all of these things, and all of that prepares us for the first resurrection. Now, at the end of the first resurrection, there's going to be, as we saw in Revelation, there's going to be a second resurrection, 1,000 years later. And then there's going to be a judgment scene. Well, Joel takes us to the judgment scene. He takes us right to the judgment scene. And I know, that's what I'm saying, it's only 3 chapters, but it covers 7,000 years. Isn't that amazing? And so here in chapter 3, you're at the second resurrection and you're at the judgment scene. Okay? He's already told you he's going to restore us. He's going to restore the land to us. Here we're going to restore the earth to us. He's going to bless us with his spirit. And then that's the first resurrection. And then the judgment scene. Okay. Joel chapter 3. Joel chapter 3. beginning at verse 1. Joel chapter 3, beginning at verse 1. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. I want you to notice. Whose captivity did he say he was bringing forth? Did you notice what he said? Behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. You see, brethren, Judah is the key here. Judah is the sign. Okay? The United States, most of the slaves that came here were from the southern kingdom of Judah. And this place is where the sign is going to be the strongest on all levels. Okay, as we talked about Wednesday night. It's going to be the strongest here. And through the awakening of Judah, the awakening of the Hebrews worldwide is taking place, starting with the awakening of Judah. See, Messiah is of Judah. So all of the sign starts with Judah. And that's what he says here. Okay, let's continue. I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. And I will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. See, they're being judged for what they did. Again, remember when we read in Zechariah, he said, what are these four horns? These are the four horns that did what? Scattered Judah and Israel. Remember that? Remember the four kingdoms? Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, and Rome scattered Judah and Israel. He's judging them. Verse 3. Notice what they did. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. Yea, what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine? Will ye render me a recompense? If ye recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head? Because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and carried into your temples my goodly and pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border. Let me stop there for a minute. I want you to notice, this is very important. Most people skip over it. I used to also, to the Most High awaken me, no pun intended, to this here. Zidon and Tyre and Palestine. If you look up the word Palestine in the Hebrew, it will say the word Philistine. And all of these places were Hamitic. They were founded by Ham's children. Okay, founded by Ham's children. Either Cush, Mizraim, Put. They were founded by Ham's children, or Canaan. They were founded by Ham's children. Then, of course, you go to the Grecians. They are the children of Japhet. So what is it really? When you go back and look at the whole thing, what's going on? We were sold by Hamitic people to Japhetic people. Isn't that what happened? We went into Africa. And when we got there, during that time, we were living there several centuries. And then in the 7th century, Islam was created. And Islam spread through all of the known world, including Africa. But how they spread their religion is if you didn't convert, they would kill you. So, of course, a lot of Africans, well, then they weren't called Africans, but people on that continent converted to Islam, including many that were of Judah. That's why when we were taken as slaves on ships, many of us were Islamic. And we were Islamic because we have been converted to that religion after having been there several centuries and after having fled from our land because of the Romans. And the Hamitic people that dominated that area, it was their land, sold us to the Grecians, the children of Japhet, to the Dutch, to the French, to the English, to the Spanish. They sold us. And that's how we ended up where we are now. Okay. That's how we end up where we are now. So it's all there. You can see the Hamitic going to Japhetic. Okay. Not just them, though. I mean, Joseph's brothers did sell him too, didn't they? So you can see how even I'm sure there were people of Judah that also sold some of their brethren into slavery as well, because that's Bible also. Okay, so let's continue. And of course, there are sellouts right now of Judah who sell out other people of Judah. We see it. It's part of the curse, isn't it? Let's continue. Joel chapter 3, beginning at verse 6. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that you might remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither ye have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. And I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabians, to a people far off, for Yahweh has spoken it. I guess there's going to be a changing of the guard. I guess there's going to be some people that are going to be put back into slavery who enslaved us. Well, doesn't the Bible say that? Wait, I know that's hard for some of y'all to believe, but let's see what it says in Revelation chapter 13. And let's get at least two witnesses. Revelation chapter 13, verse 10. Revelation 13:10. What does it say? He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and faith of the saints. So if you were of a people that were leading others into captivity, you're going to be led into captivity. If you were of a people that were murderous and killing others, you're going to be killed. Wait a minute, I said two witnesses. Isaiah chapter 14. Before we go back to Joel, Isaiah chapter 14. Mouth of two or three witnesses, let every word be established. Isaiah chapter 14, beginning at verse 1, and go down to from verse 1 down to verse 2, Isaiah 14. For Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land. And the stranger shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of Yahweh for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. That's not all the people of Japhet, but there's at least some of them that we know this fits, right? Because it says it. There's also, of course, children of Japhet where this fits. Watch this. Ezekiel, and you should be one of these if you want to be saved, which means you want to come to the truth now. But Ezekiel chapter 47. Ezekiel chapter 47. Notice what it says in Ezekiel chapter 47. Beginning at verse 21 and going down to verse 23, Ezekiel 47. So shall ye divide the land unto you according to the tribes of Israel. This is in the first resurrection. Watch this. And it shall come to pass that ye shall divide it by lot for your inheritance unto you, and to the strangers that sojourn among you, which shall beget children among you. And they shall be unto you as born in the country among the children of Israel. And they shall have inheritance with you among the tribes of Israel. And it shall come to pass that in what tribe the stranger sojourneth, there shall he give him his inheritance. Check you out. So they're not bloodline tribe, but they're going to be with us. Those are the ones that are with us now, that are with us in the heat of it, that are standing for us right now. Most High knows who they are. Let's get back to Joel. So it's not all heathen going to go into slavery, but there's going to be some obviously that do. The ones that led others into slavery, the ones that led others into captivity, the ones that were aggressively trying to hurt others. they're going to get what they got. In other words, however you treated somebody is how you're going to be treated. Joel chapter 3. Joel chapter 3. Beginning at verse 7. Excuse me, we read that already. Beginning at verse 9. Beginning at verse 9. Joel chapter 3, beginning at verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Second resurrection. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. That's Revelation 20 again. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. That Revelation chapter 14. Come, get you down, for the press is full, the vats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, the stars shall withdraw their shining. Yahweh also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem. There it is again. And the heavens and the earth shall shake, but Yahweh will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. So shall ye know that I am Yahweh your most high, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Then shall Jerusalem be holy. There shall no strangers pass through her any more. It shall come to pass in that day that the mountain shall drop new wine, and the hills shall flow with milk, and all the rivers of Judah shall flow with waters, and the fountain shall come forth of the house of Yahweh, and shall shade to the valley of Kittim. Mizraim or Egypt shall be a desolation, and Edom shall be a desolate wilderness for the violence against the children of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. But Judah shall dwell forever, and Jerusalem from generation to generation, and I will cleanse their blood that I have not cleansed, for Yahweh dwelleth in Zion. That ends chapter 3 of the prophecy of Joel and 7,000 years of Bible history, as we have seen. And so, again, we see here another prophet along. We just read Amos. No, was it Amos? What did we study? Hosea. We did Hosea. And we did Joel. And you see the history in all the prophets. We can connect them all together very easily because they're all basically saying the same thing. Okay. We can connect Revelation to Joel, Revelation and Hosea together. Zechariah, we did that. Deuteronomy and the books of Moses, we did that. Isaiah and Ezekiel and Jeremiah, they're all saying the same thing. Daniel and Messiah, they're all saying the same thing. The Apostle Paul and Isaiah, they're all saying the same thing. Praise the Most High. They only say different things to people that are following partial Bibles. Like, in other words, Christians are New Testament people. Judaizers or Judaism is 5 books of Moses, right? So you have people following whatever favorite part of the Bible they want to call theirs, but nobody's reading the whole thing, because if you did, you would understand that they're all saying the same thing. Praise the Most High Yahweh. So we're going to be studying tomorrow. We're going to begin Revelation chapter 1. We're going to start in the book of Revelation by the grace of the Most High. And it'll be Revelation series 2022, a new playlist, Revelation series 2022. Isha, I'm going to send you this Joel one. You might already have it. I'm going to send it to you. I'm going to send you Joel, so you should have it tomorrow. And then we'll start Revelation series 2022 by the grace of the Most High. Please remember my brother Calvin in your prayers in the Philippines, as he is there not knowing what's going to happen to him next. Please remember him and the people that are there, the 300,000 plus people that have been affected by this terrible typhoon. and the people, of course, in the Midwest of the United States that are being affected. And we're just in the beginning of winter, and it's hitting. Praise the Most High Yahweh. So, and please let us continue to pray for each other. Messiah said, as brethren, we should love one another. And so let us continue to pray for each other as we all are being prepared to meet our righteousness, our wisdom, Father's only begotten Messiah Yahweh Shah. Shalom.